What does it feel like when someone becomes so sorrowful that they forget how to smile? The man thought he had never truly loved his wife until he lost her in a car accident. His father-in-law delivered the devastating news of her death. There wasn't the slightest trace of grief on his face. He calmly wiped the blood from the tip of his shoe, quietly stared at the empty hospital bed, and then, as if nothing had happened, bought a piece of candy from the vending machine, but the candy got stuck in the slot. He didn't get angry, he simply stared blankly at the machine, lost in thought, before slowly jotting down the number for customer service. At his wife's funeral, the hall was filled with solemn music and waves of sobbing mourners. Yet Davis felt it was all too exaggerated, almost theatrical, because deep inside, he felt nothing at all. He tried to blend into the sadness, to feel the pain of loss, but no matter how hard he tried, he couldn't summon any emotion. Even the mournful music sounded shrill and unbearable to him. Standing before a mirror, he forced himself to cry, straining to squeeze out a few tears from his dry eyes, but nothing came. His absurd effort drew laughter from a nearby child, and the sound snapped Davis awake. Perhaps he had never truly loved his wife, and this funeral was nothing more than a meaningless performance. Lost and disoriented, his mind drifted back to that vending machine in the hospital. So he decided to write a letter to the company, an action both random and strangely fitting. To the vending machine company, I'm writing because of a bad experience with machine number 65 in the hospital lobby. I inserted $5 to buy a candy bar, but the candy never came out. I'm not writing to tell you that my wife passed away 10 minutes ago, nor am I looking for sympathy or trouble. I simply want to explain the situation clearly so that the issue can be resolved. What was meant to be a simple complaint became pages of rambling details. In his letter, Davis didn't just describe a vending machine malfunction, he poured out fragments of his life with his wife. From their first meeting to their wedding day, those memories, seemingly irrelevant to the complaint, filled the entire page like a quiet stream of emotion. Strangely enough, the next day after the funeral, Davis went back to work as if nothing had happened. He casually asked his assistant to mail the letter. His co-workers stared in disbelief. Surely he should have taken time off. But Davis seemed more energetic than ever. When his secretary gently advised him to rest, he looked up, puzzled. He couldn't understand why everyone was so obsessed with the idea of rest, or why their sorrow seemed so much deeper than his own. Even his stern father-in-law would burst into tears in front of him, and his own father came by pretending to water the plants, just to offer words of comfort telling him not to be too sad. But to Davis, all this sympathy felt absurd, because he couldn't comprehend their grief. And then, strange things began to happen. On a train, during casual conversation with a stranger, he would unconsciously steer the topic toward his late wife.
Jeez, I didn't love my wife. I know it's sad to say, but now that she's gone, I don't even feel sad or pain or hurt.
Well, what do you feel?
Perhaps the thought stirred something deep inside him, and he suddenly pulled the emergency brake. The police questioned him sternly, asking why he had done it, but his answers were incoherent and confused. The police summoned Davis for questioning, asking why he impulsively pulled the emergency brake, but his response was scattered and incoherent. Just as the chief was at a loss over this absurd situation, an investigator quietly stepped forward and whispered that Davis had just lost his wife. In that instant, the chief understood behind Davis's strange behavior was unbearable grief waiting to erupt. Fortunately, the emergency incident caused no injuries, and after receiving only a verbal warning, Davis was released home. But in the vast empty room, he was all alone. His eyes fell on the conch shell sitting on the table, his late wife's favorite decoration, but now, it only irritated him instead of bringing comfort. When he opened the fridge, he noticed the note his wife had left reminding him to fix it, but this time, he ignored it completely, too numb to care. Surprisingly, this emotional numbness gave him a strange kind of clarity, a heightened awareness of tiny details he had never noticed before. He noticed strands of his wife's hair tangled around a comb, watched squirrels chasing each other on the lawn, and even found himself mesmerized by a fallen tree by the roadside. Unable to look away, this new sensation made him feel invincible, like a superhero brimming with energy and confidence. So he decided to fix the fridge to prove he could still do something right, but he had no idea how to repair it. What began as a minor leak ended with the entire fridge knocked over and smashed into pieces under his clumsy hands. Staring at the chaos before him, he felt an unexpected sense of relief and liberation, as if the invisible chains inside him had suddenly snapped. That strange feeling of freedom washed over him like a warm spring breeze, making him fall in love with the act of tearing things apart. Soon, he dismantled his office computer, the noisy bathroom door, and even his wife's beloved coffee machine was not spared. But those small acts of destruction no longer satisfied the restless force within him, and another wild idea began to form. The next day, he drove his luxury car to a demolition site, begging the foreman to let him join the crew, even offering a wad of cash as payment for the chance to work. Davis hoped that by humbling himself, he could buy a few moments of genuine satisfaction, as though an unseen force compelled him to seek joy in destruction and rebuilding. Yet deep down, was he searching for the thrill of work or the release of something buried far deeper in his soul? Seeing Davis struggle with a small hammer, the foreman handed him a heavier sledgehammer. The moment he gripped it, a surge of energy ignited inside him, filling him with passion and vigor like never before. The workers stared in disbelief, thinking he had lost his mind. But only Davis could feel the rush of pure exhilaration coursing through him. Every swing of the hammer unleashed the weight of his repressed emotions, as if only through destruction could he feel truly alive again. During the frenzy, a nail accidentally pierced his foot, but he didn't feel pain. When the nail was finally pulled out, he gasped sharply and shouted, not in agony but in exhilaration, finding pleasure in the very sensation of hurt. Stranger still, Davis began suffering from vivid hallucinations that seemed beyond his control. In mirrors, he would glimpse his wife's faint reflection, or find himself wandering back to the seaside where they had once met. Lost between reality and memory, he once thought his sanity was cracking apart, even feeling as though a worm was crawling through his brain, eating away at his mind and shattering his world. But after a full medical examination with advanced instruments, the doctor revealed a shocking truth. There was no worm in his brain, rather. It was his heart that seemed to have a piece missing, as if something had devoured it.
Part of your heart is missing.
What? How did that happen?
Judging by the bite pattern, I'd say gypsy moths.
Fuck me.
Excuse me?
It turned out to be nothing more than a hallucination. In reality, his body was perfectly healthy. The doctor told him he was simply overworked and needed rest. Then, one ordinary day, he heard a neighbor's child joyfully beating a drum. The lively rhythm cast a spell on him, pulling him in until he couldn't help but move his long numb body. In those bouncing notes, he felt life returning to him. The powerful beats surged through his chest like fresh spring water, flooding him with energy and warmth. Yet he didn't realize that even though he never felt sadness, he had quietly lost the ability to feel joy. Still, that brief burst of excitement awakened something deep inside him, and he fell completely in love with dancing to rock music. He danced in crowded subway stations, on bustling streets, amid roaring traffic, at dusty construction sites, beside twisted handrails, and even along the neat row of columns in front of his office, moving freely, as if reclaiming the soul he thought he'd lost. He paid no attention to the curious stares or the whispers around him, as though his dance had conquered the entire world. A close friend noticed his strange behavior and tried to ask if he was okay, but Davis always replied with the same words, "I'm fine." But happiness is as fleeting as lightning, and soon Davis realized that the music which once thrilled him could no longer stir his heart. So, he turned back to his old habit of tearing things apart, and the house he had shared with his wife became his first target. He drove a tractor straight toward the villa, and with a thunderous crash, the walls split open. As Davis looked around at the wreckage, an indescribable satisfaction welled up inside him. He then walked into the bedroom, ready for even deeper release. He smashed his wife's dressing table with all his strength, and with every blow, a wild rush of thrills surged through him. But amid the chaos, a single sheet of paper fell to the floor and caught his attention. As he picked them up, he discovered a medical report. It was a pregnancy record detailing his wife's abortion. The discovery stunned him. She had never mentioned it before, and confusion filled his mind. Desperate for answers, he decided to confront his in-laws to uncover the truth. On his way there, the sunlight was too bright, so he pulled down the visor and accidentally found a note left by his wife. But with his thoughts consumed by the unborn child, He ignored the piece of paper entirely. When he arrived, the funeral for his wife was already underway. Overcome with urgency, he disregarded the solemn atmosphere and, in front of everyone, demanded answers from his in-laws.
Did she tell you she was pregnant? Last year. Did you know? Why didn't she tell me?
As Davis was about to leave, his mother-in-law caught up to him and confessed what she claimed was the truth. She told him, "That wasn't your child. My daughter had fallen in love with someone else." Davis listened quietly, his face calm and expressionless, unaware that this was a line meant to comfort him. His mother-in-law believed that by blaming her daughter's supposed infidelity, she might ease Davis's pain. Yet the lie was a double-edged sword. While it shielded him from despair, it also cut off his path to the truth. Still, as husband and wife once bound by love, Davis went to his wife's grave to say his final goodbye. While standing before the solemn tombstone, he noticed a man in the distance also approaching with flowers. Convinced that this must be his wife's lover, he pretended to be calm and asked for the man's name, then told him quietly that he already knew everything. Looking into the man's eyes, Davis's expression was complex, yet he simply said, "I just hope you truly loved her." But the man's face filled with confusion. He seemed not to understand what Davis meant and spoke with a trembling voice. "I was the driver of the other car. That day, I looked at my phone for just a moment and caused the accident that can never be undone." As he spoke, tears of remorse streamed down his face, his words heavy with guilt and sorrow. Davis finally realized he had accused the wrong person. The tide of suspicion receded from his heart, replaced by an indescribable sense of sympathy. No matter what, the tragedy could never be undone. A faint, wordless comfort seemed to ripple between two broken souls. When he got back into his car, his eyes fell on the note he had once tossed aside. He bent down to pick it up and saw the delicate handwriting. "If it's cloudy, you won't see me. If the sky is clear, you'll remember me." The words plucked at his heartstrings, stirring a rush of emotions as images of overlooked details began to flood his mind. He thought of all the notes his wife had left scattered through their life together, the memories returning as if they had happened only yesterday. He remembered their laughter and playful chatter right before the accident, the joy of that moment still echoing faintly in his ears. As the rain of memories swept across the river of time, his numbness finally cracked. He suddenly burst into laughter, but there was a bitter, sorrowful note hidden within it. A wave of memories surged through him, his wife's warmth, their laughter, their arguments and reconciliations, all of it spilling out as tangled emotions mixed with tears. Longing, guilt, and regret twisted together inside him like invisible chains, binding his body and mind, dragging him into a bottomless abyss. If love can flow like a gentle stream, then grief descends slow and heavy. When it finally arrives, it strikes like a storm, and within it, the depth of his unspoken love became starkly clear, unyielding, fierce, and painfully real. When someone close leaves this world, the first moment may not even feel sad. What cuts deepest are the tiny details of daily life. It's opening the fridge to find half a carton of milk still holding the warmth of a loved one's touch. It's seeing the ivy on the windowsill swaying gently in the breeze, now untended by the one who cared for it. It's the blanket lying quietly on the bed, unable to embrace that familiar, warm body ever again. These ordinary sights become knives that pierce the heart, leaving pain beyond words. The saddest moment is when the storm inside you begins to calm, only for fragments of their memory to strike you without warning, slicing you apart piece by piece. That pain cannot be put into words, nor can it find any release. It is deep and enduring, like an endless night. I tried to struggle, to reach for some glimmer of light, but the memories wrapped around me like a nightmare I could not escape. I finally understood that pain without release is the truest pain, and a life you cannot change is a truly broken life. I once thought your departure was just a heavy rain in my life, a sadness that would pass and make way for sunlight. But I never imagined that this rain would seep into every corner of my existence, leaving my whole life damp and cold. It quietly soaked through everything, so that in every unguarded moment, I could still feel the chill and desolation of your absence.